All right, everyone, we are back with the Budgetnista, Tiffany Aliche. And today we're going to be talking about financial wholeness and this idea of getting good with money. Tiffany's got a new book. It's just went out at the beginning of March 2021. And I think this book is needed in the universe for the reasons that will become very clear throughout the episode. But I just wanted to preface this by saying how many books about finances just leave people behind? They assume all of these things about what you know and your status in life and what you've achieved up to this point. You pick it up, you're 2 chapters in, and you realize, I don't even know where to start. When you look at personal finance through the lens of financial wholeness, that argument goes away. And I think Tiffany knocked it out of the park with her book, Get Good with Money. We're going to talk about that today. Welcome to Choose FI.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
All right, guys, as mentioned, very excited to have Tiffany back on the show. She's an absolute rock star. She's changing the world, and she's bringing her tribe of dream catchers along with her. She's got a new book that we want as many people to know about as possible. So very excited to have this conversation. And to help me with this, I have my co-host, Brad, here with me today. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Jonathan, I am doing quite well. Yeah, I am thrilled to have Tiffany back on the show. We had her on episode 240, which we entitled From Financial Imperfection to America's Favorite Budget Expert. And that pretty much covers it. You'll hear why she is America's favorite budget expert. Her energy is infectious. Her story is amazing. She's reached, I think at last count, it was 500,000 dream catchers in her community. I'm sure it's much, much higher since the last time we talked to her. And yeah, like you said, financial wholeness. A quote jumped out to me from her book that, if you don't mind, I want to read it here. It's, but when you are financially whole in the way that I'll teach you to be, you won't have to live in fear. You'll have a plan for each area of your finances so that they are constantly working on your behalf. And I love that. And I think that's what's so great about her book is she really does dive into it in 10 different ways. And I'm just thrilled to have you back. So Tiffany, thanks for coming back to Choose FI.
Thank you for having me, Jonathan, Brad. It's always awesome to be here.
Well, let's talk about living in fear. So you've worked with 500,000 dream catchers and growing. I'm sure we'll correct that number here. But living in fear, especially fear of finances, I want to make sure people capture, because that's a quote you used. What does that mean to you? And what do you think that means to your community? Like, who is this information for and why?
It's for people who have had financial trauma and drama happen. Maybe you've lost a job, especially in the last year. Maybe you've been furloughed. Maybe you have a new kid on the way, and you're just like, well, we could barely afford the kid that we do have. Fear, financial fear, is just when you know that the money that you're making is not quite enough for not the things that you want, but really the things that you absolutely need. Or some people live in financial fear because maybe they're okay right now, but they can really foresee a future where they're not going to be okay if they continue on this path. Maybe secretly, they're gambling more than their family might realize, or they know that they're not well and they're sick and they know they won't be able to work much longer. So many of us carry that along with us and secretly, and most of us carry it really as a form of shame because we beat ourselves up. I know I did when I was struggling, like, Tiffany, you should do better. You should know better. And I wanted to help people release that fear and release that shame so they could really focus on solutions and put one foot in front of the other and create plans that actually worked.
Yeah, Tiffany, I love that. And it actually ties into another quote from your book that, as you can tell, I love the book. So I jotted down so many quotes here. It's fear and it's lack of understanding of personal finances. It's lack of security. I know you talked about, I felt more secure making $39,000 a year teaching preschool than I did as a business owner making more than $39,000 a month. And it just goes to show that a strong foundation can be built with much less than you think. And that wealth is more than just money in the bank.
Yes.
I thought that was brilliant. That, again, that jumped off the page to me. And it's mindset, right? That's where this all starts.
It's mindset, but it's also like the building blocks of personal finance. I think it like hit me the other day that I have this reoccurring theme in my life, and it's foundational and fundamental education. So I used to teach Sunday school when I was in high school. And so Sunday school is like foundational religious education. Then I taught preschool for over 10 years, and that's foundational education. And now I realize that, like, Tiffany, is that not what you do as the budgetnista? Like, you're not going to hear me talk about options. You're not going to hear me. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's just not. As a preschool teacher, I didn't teach algebra. I taught preschool. And I realized that my role and goal is to give you the foundation that you need so that way you can go on to greatness. You can go on to investing at a high level. You can go on to purchasing that home that you want, starting that business that you want. Because my concern that I've seen is that people are chasing the end goal without creating a foundation that if something were to happen, that they would still be okay at the core. I've made that mistake myself, and I know how devastating it is to build this whole life. And in 1 year, back-to-back financial trauma happens and everything is gone, like literally everything. And I promised myself I was never, like when I say never going back, it left me traumatized. I said, I'm never going back there again. What do I need to do to maintain and to not go back there? And so as I was fixing myself, I realized that although I was teaching my dream catchers specific things, I wasn't teaching them that part of what I was creating for myself. And through the new book, I said, no, I'm going to expose and share, what I've been doing over the last 10 years to never go back to that place again.
Tiffany, with that fear, right? So many of us have fear when it comes to finances around, again, it's lack of knowledge, right? Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, for most people, it takes that incident, right? That debt catastrophe, that external incident to awaken us. I'm curious, how do you reach the people before they get to that point? How do you get them to overcome that fear of not knowing before it gets to that catastrophic point?
So the truth is the fear usually comes, when the thing actually happens. To me, I think financial education, you guys know how I feel about, should be taught in schools. We make that happen in part in New Jersey because I want to normalize financial education very early on. But also, too, one of the things I do is to create community. I think that money is a team sport. And if you normalize talking about money, the good, the bad, and the in between, then you can help circumvent that fear of I don't know, because you realize there's a lot of people who don't know. We have this weird thing about money as adults, like we're supposed to magically know. If I were to break my arm today, I highly doubt that, Jonathan, you'd be like, really? Why didn't you just set the bone? How would I know how to do that?
You didn't
Did I go to medical
Google that
school?
already? That's just...
You're still walking around with that broken arm?
Does YouTube still work? I mean, it's...
Exactly. So then where do we find this magical information about money if you didn't go to school for it? So we're so hard on ourselves as adults for not magically knowing how to do all things with our money with no prior education. So to me, how you sidestep that fear is through education. I have this 3-prong approach: knowledge, access, and community. So knowledge, like this is the book. This is like, I have a podcast, Brown Ambition. This is like education that you would normally not have access to, right? Access is through people. I love to showcase other financial educators that are rocking and socking. I sent so many people to Choose 5's foundation because so many people are wanting financial education for their kids. And then community. I really think it's important. That's why I built Dream Catchers, that you are not alone as you go through your journey. So that is really how you sidestep fear: knowledge, access, and community.
Well, let's talk about financial wholeness here just for a second. And I'd really like to talk about like how you came up with that framework, how you put those pieces together. And then just for listeners, check out the book and we'll talk about that as well. But I want to give maybe some examples in a couple of the categories that I think people, probably they're blind spots for people. And there's just so much, there's a wealth of information that you put in here. You did a great comprehensive job. We're going to talk about the high level stuff here, but then actually inside the book, breaking down the points of consideration. I was just very impressed with the comprehensive approach and how accessible it actually was. But help individuals create a framework. In your mind, what are the pieces that constitute financial wholeness?
So the pieces that constitute financial wholeness are first budgeting, then savings, then debt, then credit, then learning how to earn. That's the first tier of the foundation. Then you have investing for both retirement and wealth. Then you have insurance, net worth, your professional team. I like to call it your money team, your team of professionals, and last but not least, estate planning. That's the next layer. So those are the 10 components of financial wholeness. And to me, financial wholeness is when those 10 components combine together. Like think of Transformers, depending on how old you are. You might not.
Oh,
you're
love
Gen
it.
Z,
Love it. Love Transformers.
Definitely remember. Had all the toys.
Robots in disguise. You know.
Right? Exactly.
Did you know they were in
Right? So
disguise?
I know. Right? So think of Transformers, right? Separately, these are great things, but they come together to form this strong financial foundation that you build the rest of your goals, hopes, and dreams on. And so that's what financial wholeness is that when these 10 components combine together to build your strong financial foundation. And that's what I wish for everyone.
So Brad mentioned episode 240 that we featured you in, and we really talked a lot about the Budgetnista's origin story. Tiffany, she's not a fashionista, she's a budgetnista, right? We also, and I just on behalf of our audience, we also talked about Jake the Thief. Cue the dark music right now. Well, I think first I have a question there, but like, what's going on with them? Any sort of follow-ups? What's going on in that world?
Yes. So, as I was writing Get Good with Money, I said, you know what? I was writing the chapter. I said, let me Google what's going on with Jake the Thief. Obviously, his name is not Jake, but it's very distinct.
It'd be cooler if it was.
So if I Googled his name, and I've Googled his name before over the last, 10 years of his thievery. And usually it would come up like some article about whatever company he was running or whatever. But the most recent time I Googled, it said Jake the Thief versus the United States government. I was like, no way.
Wow.
No way. So apparently Jake the Thief decided to escalate his thievery from poor 20-something-year-olds like me to, and it went up and up and up, and he tried fraud with the United States government, and they don't lose those cases. And so Jake the Thief is currently sitting in federal prison. I don't know if he gets podcasts there, but if he does, hey, Jake.
Hey, Jake.
No, but
You've gone from famous to infamy. Congratulations.
I know. But, what it just shows is that fast way to cash, it can be very addictive, especially if it works at first, and then it works, and then it works, and then it works. But you don't build that financial foundation, not to say that learning options before you actually learn the fundamentals of stocks and bonds and such. But it doesn't mean that, you're Jake the Thief. But I think it's a cautionary tale about actually learning from the ground up how to manage your money versus from the top down, because it can really cause you to lose everything because you don't really know how you built what you built.
That's so interesting. And as you were saying that, it reminded me, so without the crime, obviously, but it reminded me of a mistake in my life, which is, when you're talking there of sometimes the wrong thing works.
Yes.
At first, and it works over a short period of time, right? A small enough sample size. Like I've talked on this podcast about how I had this horrible real estate speculation in my early 20s. And, it's similar to you. Like I didn't know any better. This, somebody was telling me this was a great way to make money, and it worked at first, until it didn't work. And 15 plus years later, I just finished paying off these things. Right. So, that was a catastrophic error. But if I had that fundamentals, right, if I had that financial wholeness, I wouldn't have fallen for that. Just like you, to imagine you, Tiffany, today in 2021, falling for Jake the Thief's shenanigans. That would be laughable, right? Could you even imagine that today? It's crazy.
If we were to scale that example forward into kind of what we're seeing right now, Brad, to your point, like what if that bad behavior rewards you financially? And bad behavior is the wrong term, but that risky behavior rewards you financially. Then do you put all of your weight into continued risky behavior? And you always think back about that one time at work, not recognizing that you've had a slew of losses ever since because you've built your whole financial life around, I don't know, throw your preferred coin out there. Maybe it's like a rocket ship. Maybe we're talking about like a GameStop type example. Maybe it's something that happened by some sort of, crypto, whatever. And it just went wild and but you never, regardless, the results you got basically said, all right, this works. So now I'm just going to stay here. I'm never going to worry about financial wholeness because this works. And it works until it doesn't. Yes. And actually, and this really is where your story begins, but I think it's really important for people that when it doesn't work and you don't have financial wholeness, you don't have a foundation to analyze what went wrong, and you don't have anybody to talk to, you end up basically in the exact situation that you ended up in, Tiffany, as a teacher. So set the frame there, because that's really the conversation for, you stumbled into this. How did that happen? And then now we'll look at a version of it that's a little bit more replicable.
So yeah, I ended up $35,000 in credit card debt, student loan $52,000 there, and my mortgage that I could no longer pay for, it was about $220,000. So roughly about $300,000 in debt, but with no income coming in, and I didn't even know like what to do, because I had not built my financial foundation in some time. In the very beginning, in my early 20s, I really focused on foundational things because I was really learning from home. My father was a CFO, taught me. And then by like 25, I was like, hey, I'm a full grown adult. I've got this. But I decided I didn't want to do the slow. My dad would always say, slow and steady wins the race. That was his favorite thing. Slow, because my dad's Nigerian. Slow and steady wins the race. I'm like, nobody wants to go slow and steady. Right?
Check out my running shoes. Check them out.
Yes. Literally, I remember I was like, I want to be rich by next year. So that's why I fell in with Jake the Thief. And so what I learned though is, and to your point, was it you, Brad, who said that it took you that long to dig out? It took me about 5 years before I was even back to just preschool status, like it was that's what people don't understand, that, even if you were to win off of, like, let's just say like a GameStop or whatever, if you lose, the loss is so much deeper than the win has taken you. It can just wipe you out for such a long time. And it takes a strong person sometimes to dig your way back out from that. I'm glad for it, because now I've got such a great foundational platform that, and now I am slow and steady wins the race. My mentee teases me all the time. She always says, Tiffany, you can wait for a coin, like meaning that like I'm very methodical about my decisions. I try not to swing wildly to the left or to the right. And, I make choices, and I always think to myself, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, is this still going to be a choice that's going to make sense for me? And even if it means take the short-term L, so the short-term loss for the long-term W, the long-term win. So I don't mind taking the short-term L, because it's like, ooh, you could have jumped in now. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't even really understand what that means. Like if I don't understand an investment, I don't care how much money you're making. I'm just like, but explain it to me like I'm 10. Oh, you don't understand it. That to me is a red flag. When someone can't explain it to me like I'm 10, then they don't understand it. And I'd be like, I'm always the one, the unlucky one that joins what is those things? Those like, those blessing looms. Remember everybody was doing that? Like we're like those pyramid schemes. I'm the one who joins like, you know what? I'm finally going to join. And that's what it all comes crashing down.
Yeah. So when you're joining that then means it's over. Like the shark has officially been jumped. Yeah,
exactly. So no, I say fundamentals all the way and build. And as a result of that, what happens is in the beginning, the build looks slow, and then you hit your stride. And now I can say that, I don't know if I call myself wealthy. I guess, but no, I have my net worth is multiple seven figures, and not just in like hard assets, but also in cash and other assets. And I couldn't have imagined this. And it didn't take as long as I thought. The first 5 years were really rough. The next 5 years, once I learned how to build that foundation, I was able to build much more quickly. And as a result, here I am now. I'm not like 80 years old. It didn't take till then. So that's what I'm wanting for people, to have the opportunity to build the life they want, but to be able to really maintain the life that they want.
Hey, this is Andrew from the Choose FI team. Hope you're enjoying the show. We're going to get right back to it after these quick messages.
I think as we start to look at this framework, one of the things that I just really appreciated is the way that you approach. We're going to obviously, budgeting is no surprise that you're really, really good at this. But I've had a chance to watch, one of your workshops and read your book. And I really like the way that you categorize things, your organizational structure for helping people think about bills. I think it's something that it really makes it accessible. And I think it allows people to kind of understand and have a framework for what they have control over. So I'd love to, as we kind of work through just a few of the categories, no surprising, we're talking about budgeting. I'd love for people to walk away having a sense for how they could actually apply some of these tools to their own life. So let's do exactly that. Talk to me about budgeting and specifically how you assign control categories to your expenses.
This is something I discovered actually in my mid-20s, and it was like light bulb. So there are 3 control categories to your budget. So first you list all your expenses, everything you're spending money on and how much it's costing you a month. But I like to assign categories because I think I wanted to go on vacation. I was trying to figure out where I could cut, So category number 1 are B's, because it's so easy to identify your B's, which are your bills. If you have a financial obligation, that's a bill. Then some of those B's, though, are what I call utility bills or usage bills. So those are bills that really, they fluctuate based upon how much you use them. So think water, think electricity. There are not very many UBs. So I put a U in front of those Bs. Sometimes you might even, it depends, like, people usually don't, pay-per-view, I guess, if you're still using cable. So just think about any sort of bill that fluctuates.
I love that we just said, if you're still using cable, like you're such a small outlier. If the last 2% of the world will just convert, we can say bye to cable bills and now embrace the 20 a la carte options that all of us have convinced ourselves that we've cut the cable with, you know?
I don't mean like you're paying just as much, right?
We got them good. Solved it.
Right? But here's the thing. I'm not even judging because my husband insists that we keep our cable. So we have cable in our house. We're one of those ones. So then those UBs for your usage bills, the bills that go up and down based upon how much you use them. And then everything else is a C. For me, C stands for cash expenses, or you can call them choice expenses because you're not always using cash for these. But these are really the expenses that you've kind of chosen what you pay, how you pay, when you pay. So an example would be rent, mortgage, car note, car insurance. UB, as I explained, are your utilities, and cash, it might be groceries, haircut, gas for the car. These are things you have choices over. So what I like to do that is because 2 reasons. One, you get to identify, do you have a spend too much issue or don't make enough issue if you're short at the end of the month time and time again? Because me, frugal teacher Tiffany, I remember I was like, I want to go on vacation and how come I don't have any money? So my natural instinct, because I'm naturally frugal, or at least I've been raised to be frugal, is to cut back. So frugal Tiffany was like, oh, well, no nails, no hair, no this, no that, no go, but that, if I would have looked at my 3 categories, I would have said, okay, where's most of your money going? To your B's and UBs or to your C's? If most of your money is going to your C's, you have a spend too much issue because those are your choices, your cash expenses. If most of your money monthly is going to your B's and UBs, you likely have a don't make enough issue because these are really your financial responsibilities. And so once I realized, Tiffany, you don't have a C problem. You don't go anywhere. You don't do anything. You have a don't make enough issue. I was like, you have a don't make enough issue, like at 25. And I was like, okay. So instead of trying to cut the little bit of fun out of my life that I still had, I realized I need to make more. So I started to tutor and babysit versus cut back on my budget. I would say it used to make about $5,000 to $6,000 a year. Additionally, on top of teaching preschool, tutoring and babysitting. And I use some of that money to enjoy life more. And so those categories help you do that. And they also help you with this, like temporarily, if you're like, things are really tight, you're furloughed or you're on unemployment because you lost your job, you can make cuts to your C's first. Sometimes people are like, oh my God, we're going to lose a job. And they start slashing B's, but those are bigger cuts. I'd much rather you look at your C's, make some choices there, make some cuts, and then ask yourself, is it enough? If not, move on up to the second level, UBs. Can we, take shorter showers? Can we really turn off some of these lights? What are some things we can do to lower some of these other usage expenses? Still not enough? Now you can move up to your B's. When the lease is up, should we move from our 1-bedroom to a studio?
Can you tell us the water, turn the water off was interesting. Can you tell us the ice cream water story real quick? Because this is something Tiffany personally had to go through, right?
Yes, but at 6, I had to learn the lesson the hard way. So I was obsessed with water when I was 6 years old. This is straight out of the book. And my dad was trying to figure out how to get me to stop turning off water. It wasn't just one faucet. Like I wanted a cacophony of water running. Like I would go to the bathroom, like the 2 bathrooms that we had, and then the kitchen. And then now I look back and I'm like, what? Just turn it off. But now when my niece and my nephew come over and I tell my niece no, and she starts screaming and falling out, I see now why parents are like, just keep that damn water on. Because like kids, you're just like, honestly, I don't want to deal with the temper tantrum. And so my father was trying to figure out how to get me to stop. And I also loved ice cream like every kid. And so at the time I had 5 sisters, but at the time it was only 3 of us and we all loved ice cream. But in the summertime, my dad was not going to buy $3 worth of ice cream a day as we begged for it because we didn't have much money, but he did let us pick a day. My day, I believe, was Tuesday. So that meant on Tuesdays, if the ice cream man came by, I could go inside and ask for $1. And my sisters would have to go inside and get like the ice cream from the freezer. So we'd all have ice cream. I would just have special ice cream. And so my other sister was maybe like Monday, the other sister Wednesday. So this time, heard the ice cream man, realized it's Tuesday, Tiffany's day. I run inside to get my $1. My dad, in all his Nigerian wisdom, was like, you just missed the water man. And I was like, okay. I don't care about the water, man. And he was like, no, that every time you turn on the water, we have to pay the water man. And this time I didn't have any money on me. So I had to give him your ice cream day $1. I don't quite remember. I kind of feel like I remember remembering, but apparently I had the most meltdown of all meltdowns, cried myself to sleep, lamented, asked if they could provide, like get a police officer to come to the house. Cause at 6, I really thought like the waterman stole my $1. But that day I learned that, I honestly, even to this day, I don't keep water running. Like if I'm not using it, it's off. Like, how some people brush their teeth with the water running? When my husband does it, I'm like, turn the water off. Like if you're not using the water currently. And so what my father effectively taught me, though, that there were financial consequences for my actions, but he made it age appropriate for a 6-year-old. And so, to me, that's the lesson that we could all learn as grown adults, that there are financial consequences for your actions. So it's like, are you going to choose water or are you going to choose ice cream? And I try my best to choose ice cream.
I love that. What a lesson that lasts 30 plus years. That is remarkable. And I also loved how you kind of reframed in the book the whole concept of budgeting, right? You said a budget is your say yes plan. This is not deprivation. It's your say yes plan. It can allow you to say yes to your wildest dreams, going on vacation, going back to school, starting a business. You can say yes to all these things if you're willing to make the necessary changes. Mm-hmm. And that, to me, I know I put in my own words there with the deprivation, but I mean, that's what that reminds me of, right? Is so many people think of this as it's like akin to going on a diet, right? I've got to go on a diet. I've got to go on a financial diet. And that just sounds terrible. It sounds like depriving yourself, as opposed to you reframe this and you say, no, my friend, this is your say yes plan. Mm-hmm. Where did you come up with that? I love that reframe.
Well, because I used to do my budget and I'd be like, oh, come on, just say yes, just say, because I was trying to figure out, it was always for me, because I love travel. Because my friend would be like, oh, I'm going to California. You want to go? I'm like, how much is it? She's like, well, we'll sleep on my friend's couch. This is like in my early 20s. We'll sleep on my friend's couch, but the flight's going to be $300. And I'd be like, oh, let me look at my budget. Just say yes, just say yes, just say yes. So I'd be slashing things to see where I could find the money. And I thought to myself, like, I really looked to my budget to tell me yes. And then the other day I realized that, like, if we all looked at our budgets like the way we look at our moms, right? So your budget's like your mom. She wants to tell you yes, but there's an if or but. Mom, can I go outside? Yes. If you finish your homework. Mom, can I have dessert? Yes. When you finish dinner. Mom, can I go play with a friend? Yes, but you have to ... So imagine that, like, your mom and your budget wants what's best for you. Your budget wants you to be able to do the thing, but to do so in a way that's sustainable and that it's not going to cause you financial harm down the way. Same thing for moms, right? Your mom's not saying no to dessert or no to going outside because she's trying to be mean. She's saying, yes, you can do those things if you line yourself up in a certain way. And so I think if we thought about budgets that way, then people would not be so adverse to wanting to lean into a budget. Because budgets are really, like to me, it's the cornerstone for the rest of your financial life. It is one of the most important blocks in your financial life. If you can master your budget and you can look at it differently, like, honestly, I joyfully, like, literally, I was like, ooh, this Saturday, it's budget time. My husband's like, you're such a weirdo. I love doing my budget because I know I'm going to be able to find things and be like, I know we said we wanted a Peloton. What do we have to do? I know we said that, when outside opens back up, I want to go on a lavish vacation. I told my husband, like, no, I want to go like on a 5-star vacation, when outside opens back up. So how much is that going to cost us, But my budget is there to accommodate my hopes, dreams, wishes, and desires. Now, it might require me to do something as a result, but usually the thing I have to give up is something that's not that serious to me. I don't mind not having Disney Plus and Netflix and all that other stuff, I mean, we eat a lot of Uber Eats, but not because it's so great. It's because we've just been lazy about cooking. I don't mind saying, you know what? If we just cut back on this Uber Eats for the next 6 months, we can stay at the hotel, wherever we want to stay for an extra day. And so your budget is there, like I said, to accommodate you and to give you what you want, but in a way that's sustainable and safe.
I think this book really feels a lot to me like Total Money Makeover for a new generation. And in some ways, I actually think I would prefer it as a recommendation because I think it really speaks to, we were talking about budgeting for the lavish vacation just now, but the other end of the spectrum is broke. And we talked about the
Yeah.
UBs, the Bs, the other things. This book is very accessible for broke. And I want you to actually, we'll start there and then we'll make a more compelling case here in just a minute. Let's go back to that budget. And we were talking about when you have the luxury of, picking between the UBs, the Bs, and the Cs. But what about when it's dire? When it is
Yeah.
absolutely dire, what does the broke analysis look like in the budgeting arena?
So, Jonathan, I'm glad you brought that up because I was writing this book top of pandemic and everybody was just going crazy and was just really scared because we didn't know health wise what was going to happen, but also people were like, my job just told me not to come back in and I don't know what I'm going to do. And so, normally, like you said, people write from a place of, well, everyone's kind of like at this basic level. But I realized, no, there's some people who are starting at -10, -20. I don't want to leave them behind because I know what it's like to start at -10, -20. So for me, I wanted to give people permission to say, and someone had to give me this permission that when I did not have it during the 2008, 2010 recession, that I just had to focus on my health and safety. It was the hardest thing because I grew up that you paid every bill right on time. You never this. And I remember so much so that I drained my retirement account. I drained all my savings. I took every last penny that I could find to try to make my mortgage payments for a house that was underwater. And I knew it was underwater, but all I knew is you pay what you said you're going to pay. And I drowned myself in an effort to pay what I felt like, and I did owe it. But what I didn't owe the mortgage company was my health and safety. I put myself in harm's way. Like, what if my parents didn't live in Jersey? Where was I going to stay? Like literally, I remember choosing events to go to because it was like, okay, they're going to have food at this library event. And if I go, it ends at 8. If I go at 7:50, usually at the end of these events, they're like, does anybody want to take the food home? I'd be like, me, because I didn't have enough for groceries for myself. And I was too ashamed to go home and tell my mom, like, hey, can I take food out of the refrigerator? Literally, I'd wait for my parents to go to church and just like go through their deep freezer because they still had a deep freezer. Because growing up with 5, raising 5 kids, we had this deep freezer and my mom still had it. And sometimes she would put extra food in there. And like, I would wait for them not to be home because I was too ashamed to say. So I wanted to address that to give you the permission to say, well, what are my health and safety expenses? The expenses I must pay to maintain my health and safety and to tell everyone else I don't have it right now. But when I do, this is what I plan to do. So I wanted to give people that language and the permission to put themselves first. Not to say I'm not going to pay what I owe or who I owe, because I do really believe that you ought to, but not at the expense of your health and safety. You can get to them when you get to a safer place financially.
And I think that lens of prioritizing health and safety is really balanced out by when you get to the chapter 30% whole, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but the 30% whole chapter is dig out of debt, but it's not, dig out of debt is the wrong way of looking at it. It is like understand, I don't know how, this is 5 years ago, I don't think this was like your wheelhouse, your base of knowledge. 10 years ago, definitely not your base of knowledge. Your ability, though, probably working with your team and with experts to bring this into place and make this accessible for people makes the book worth it. This chapter alone, I'm telling you. And I'd love for you just to pull just a few of those tips out and how you aggregate and why understanding you really need to know what's in this chapter if you are -10, -20, -30, like if you've got the collector's calling. This, I'm blown away by what you input in this chapter. Give us just a little sense for like maybe what you learned as you were really doing the research to bring this home.
Honestly, the research for that chapter, it's funny you say that, Jonathan, that was all me. It was research because I wrote down the steps of what I was going through. And I thought to myself, okay, now that I've been raked through the coals of my debt, like I got it now. It started off as a blog post that I wrote years ago because someone asked me, how are you managing? And I'm like, well, this is the steps that I'm doing. And so, yes, we all know the snowball method, the avalanche method. Yes. And definitely I referenced that. But dealing with debt collectors, I remember like when I was teaching preschool, one of my coworkers, debt collectors used to call the daycare center for her. And I remember being like, what? Because, it's parents that call. That's it. And we didn't have a double line. So if you were on with the debt collector, then a parent would get a busy signal. And I remember then Googling, like, are debt collectors allowed to call you at work? And then I saw that like, no, you can ask them not to, and they have to stop. And I remember telling her that. That was like kind of like my first awakening of like, this debt collector thing is really like egregious. And then when I was teaching at the United Way in my early 30s, this is when I was just starting to dig my own way out of being broke. I got a contract with the United Way to teach financial education lessons. A lot of people came to me with debt issues. And I just remember specifically when I was losing my house to foreclosure, how the bank treated me and how I lived in terror and fear when my phone rang, and how I was like, how do I fix this? Like, what do I say? One, I learned that like, they don't have to call you. So like I did the research then, this is 10 years ago, like, oh, if I ask them not to call, but especially if you put it in writing, especially if you fax it, it's so old school, but even to this day, faxing is the best thing you could do to a debt collector because they get it instantly. And at the bottom, you get your return of like receipt, like they received it, to say, just go ahead and I think I have one in the book, but like a cease and desist letter. Because like I remember distinctly, like because I was behind my mortgage, they started calling my sister, who was working for this. She's a scientist, so she was working for this huge company that was working on a cancer cure. And she was not like, we didn't have her phone number because they were so terrified that like a competitor would find out about like what they were working on. She could not get calls at work, and they were calling her at work, and she called me like screaming at me like they're going to fire me. And I remember that's what really like had me shaking, like, oh my God, because debt collectors, they know my sister's not me. And so I was like, I have to fix this. And so I found the cease and desist letter, and I put every number I could think of on it that they had been calling. But you have to give them you should give them a way to contact you. I said, you could send me a letter, you could send me an email, but even how to talk to debt collectors. A lot of that happened from my mistakes of like saying too much. Are you Tiffany? Yes. And that debt, send me a debt verification letter. Send me a debt verification letter to verify that you, like literally the language in there was because I spoke to a friend who's an attorney, and I was like, Michaela, they're calling me that. She was like, did you get a debt verification letter? She's like, I'm like, no. She was like, this is what you say. Send me a debt verification letter to verify you have the right to inquire about this debt. I was like, wait. Literally, I remember distinctly.
And those words are in this book. That's the amazing part.
Yes.
The level that's in here, even
Yes.
little things like, when you get on the call with them and they want you to acknowledge that this debt is in fact yours and you're just being nice or whatever, your desire to be nice is working against you. Like I'm telling you, if you have someone that's struggling with debt and needs a concrete way of all the points of consideration, this chapter will streamline your life and give you some peace that like the world's not going to end. You're going to be able to grapple control back on this. You can achieve financial wholeness, even though right now, this is your focus. This is absorbing all of your emotional energy. You can put that inside of a box. That's what I was blown away.
And that was one of the last pieces, like literally Penguin was like, Tiffany, this book cannot get any longer. Because like, if anybody knows me, I'm an overgiver. I'm like, and then I remember I read the debt chapter and I was like, Tiffany, you don't have your, how to handle debt collectors in here. And they were like, honestly, Tiffany, no. I said, no. It has to be in here. Like I said, like I had a blog post on it and I was like, no. This must be in here. And so I took the post down and I edited it down and I gave it to them. I'm like, no, because I know that terror and fear that people feel. Like, can you imagine like your bank saying, yeah, when you get home, there's going to be a lockbox on your house and all your stuff in there? I mean, I was terrified. And so, I don't want anyone else to live in terror. You have more power than you think, a lot more power than you think. And they're just little tidbits like, hey, did you know they're recording you? And you can get them to acknowledge that they are wrong via recording. Like, so I know this is being recorded. So are you saying that you're going to legally lock me out of my house? All of a sudden, supervisor breaks through. I'm just going to take it from here. I'm like, oh, yes, welcome supervisor to the party, And so, like that bank, they were the worst. I mean, they've been sued and so many times. But I'm so glad that you like that chapter, because especially that component, because it almost didn't make it in. I forgot it came in last minute after they were like, you're already over the pages. I'm like, one more thing. So, And
then.
And then.
No, that's so great. And I loved how tactical you were, but I also love how you talked about not letting debt become part of your identity, right? This was so critical to me. It's, don't say I'm in debt, which I took to saying, don't say I am debt, right? That's all that I am financially is I am this debt. Because as you said, you're likely to get stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love for you to talk about that.
There's no shade to the debt freedom, the debt-free like community. It's a good thing. But the problem that I find with like focus on just being debt-free is that like, okay, so debt freedom is a goal, not the goal. Like it's literally like, oh, like as you're working toward the goal, which is financial wholeness and growing wealth, you should be picking up debt freedom like apples, like a little debt freedom here, a little budget, a little saving. But people make debt freedom like the goal, and then you stop at debt freedom, like I did it.
You could be broke and be debt free.
I say that all the time. I've got a nephew, no mortgage, no car note, no student loans, but he's 5. He is debt free and he's broke.
Nailing.
Right?
He's going to nail adolescence. Absolutely nail it.
Right? Roman is like, yes, I'm debt free. So if debt freedom meant wealth, then why are these toddlers still eating off of us? Why are they not driving around in Bentleys? You know what I mean? Like, think about that. Like, kids are debt free. And so, like, it is part of the whole part of the puzzle, but it's not the puzzle itself.
Financial independence. That's what I hear.
I know. Here's the thing. I don't have any beef with the FIRE folks, but same thing with like financial freedom. So I think financial freedom is also an incomplete picture because I had reached financial freedom. I was like, okay, Tiffany, technically, if you don't want to work anymore, you have enough put aside, you don't have to. Then I met with my CFP because I felt like I want to maximize like growing wealth. And she was like, yeah, so when's the last time you got insurance? Because you're insured like you're 25 and you're 40. And I was like, wait, what? Because I got it when I was 25, like my insurance policies. So it made me realize that like, wait, you can be financially free and still have holes. Like I was severely underinsured as it related to like my life insurance, like I was severely underinsured as it related to just like overall insurance. I ended up getting an umbrella policy. I didn't have an estate plan. Financial freedom doesn't talk anything about having an estate plan. There are like, Prince, the artist formerly known as, he died without a will and an estate plan. This man was wealthy on wealthy. He was obviously financially free, but he was not financially whole. And as a result, he works his whole life to build this amazing estate only for it to go. It all went to his sister. And what if that's not what he wanted? I mean, I believe in financial freedom. And the FIRE movement is great, but I do believe that there is a holistic view that we're missing. And that's what I hope Get Good with Money helps people do, that as you are working on these other components, that you get a holistic understanding of what your money should be doing. Because what's so great about it is that you can be a teacher making $39,000. You could be an entrepreneur making $1 million. You can be a mechanic making $100,000. Everyone can achieve financial wholeness. It is available and accessible to everyone.
All right. So to our audience, I hope you go get a copy of this book. I think you'll get a lot of value from it. Tiffany Aliche, The Budgetnista. And to get your copy of the book, you can go anywhere books are sold, or you can go to getgoodwithmoney.com. That would be another way to access it at your retailer of choice. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone, I hope you got value from today's episode. And I think regardless of where you are on your path to financial independence, it is worthwhile to just take a moment and make sure you're looking at things through the lens of financial wholeness. There are many different pieces that go into this, but I think what we all appreciate about this path that we're on is we have a solid foundation. If you know someone who does not have that solid foundation, or maybe you yourself are looking for fundamentals, trying to get this game plan in place, would definitely recommend you take a look at this book. The fire is spreading, my friends. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
If this episode was helpful to you, don't forget to subscribe. If you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your friends about us. We can be found on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you listen to podcasts. While you're there, don't forget to check out our other shows like Everyday Courage with Jillian Johnsrud and Rebel Entrepreneur with Alan Downigan. If you would like a free bite-sized course to jumpstart your financial independence, check out Choosify.com/challenge. Choosify is produced by Andrew Mendonza and Zachary Tan and is a production of Choosify Media Incorporated. Choosify.com is managed by Annie Shealy with William McVeigh, M.K. Williams, Melissa Lagerquist, Liz Kessler, Stephen Heptig, Kelly Black, and Jennifer Ma. And Ed T is our CEO. Thanks for listening.